Africa as a Country is an online journal magazine that provides a space for African thinkers, writers, broadly belonging to or commenting on political and social change in Africa from a left perspective. So I'll say a little bit about the event first, where it comes from, and then I'll introduce our speakers before we get into things more formally. So this is a follow-on from a series of events that have taken place elsewhere in Africa. The first in Johannesburg earlier in the year, the second in Kenya. And like I said, the objective is really to bring together a new generation of young activists, writers, people within unions, people who are independent, to reflect on recent struggles for social transformation within the formal political arena, but also outside of it. And to think about what have been the recent successes, but what have been some things that we would want to improve on in struggles to come, as it pertains to attempts to push forward a change agenda. And in the Nigerian context, there have been attempts. I think one intriguing aspect of the past 5 to 10 years is that we have seen an increased incidence of young people organizing fairly striking movements which at heart are concerned with the issue of social transformation, right? And we've seen this in the form of popular protest, notably, of course, NSAS in 2020. We've seen this also in the electoral arena, right? The most recent campaign, no one has to say, featured, quite a heightened amount of youth engagement, at least in the campaigning process. What we haven't seen is these kinds of movements transforming concretely into sustainable political and social change, right? So there is, it seems, a lot of energy around mobilizing and some innovations in terms of organizing. But when it comes to sustaining the gains made, when it comes to actually institutionalizing some of these movements, that's where a huge gap lies. So part of what we're trying to do today, what brings us together, is to have a cross-section of individuals who have been part of a lot of these recent agitations, a lot of these recent really inspiring movements, reflect, in public together about what the lessons were that were learned from these activities, and also, how they envision the way forward. And this event, of course, arises in a particular moment in history as well. And it's a very tricky moment in history. I think for a lot of Nigerians, it's quite an uninspiring time. I think, there's a sort of air of exhaustion, which I think you can kind of maybe read in the atmosphere, even in the room right now. And in addition, I think it's also a very difficult time economically, right, because of some of the recent policies that have been put in place, some of which I'm sure we'll reflect on today. But in that context, I think it's still important to recognize what has been achieved, particularly from the point of view of the popular masses, from the point of view of Nigerian citizens, right? It's, I think, very easy, given the political context, to be very apathetic or sad about the situation. But at the same time, I think things have been accomplished in recent times. So, without wanting to just kind of put an optimistic gloss over the situation that we're undergoing, I think this panel also gives us an opportunity to think about some of the successes, whilst also reflecting on ways in which they can be improved. But in addition to the kind of recent developments, we wanted to give ourselves an opportunity to also think historically. What is unique about this time period? Is it unique? In what ways have we seen moments in Nigerian history that look similar to this? So in addition to young activists, we've also have in our midst some, let's say, not as young activists as well, more experienced activists and thinkers. So we hope that that gives us an opportunity to have an intergenerational conversation, as well as a conversation that spans, various movements operating in the contemporary period. So that's by way of a kind of big introduction, and let me kind of assure you that you've heard probably as much as you hear from me. So if my voice is starting to annoy you, don't be worried. I'm going to shut up pretty soon and hand over to people who know what they're talking about. But we're really glad to have her here today. And then we also have Comrade Owe Lakemfa, who is the Secretary General of the Organization of African Trade Union Unity, former Secretary General of the Organization for African Trade Union Unity, and was also previously a Deputy Secretary General for the NLC, the Acting General Secretary for the NLC. Great to have you with us. And then finally we have Juan Sanyaolu. Important clarification.
And I wanted that name, I didn't give it to me.
Important clarification.
That's fine.
My apologies, Comrade. Okay, and Juwan is the director of the Take It Back movement in Nigeria. So, could you please join me in welcoming them with a brief the past few years and the role of youth in social movements and political movements. What would you say have been some big lessons, I think, that have emerged from the experience of NSAS for you, and also from the experience of the past election? And I think it would be good in reflecting to kind of pay more attention to the movement side, is obviously the state and state institutions and state actors played quite a huge role in shaping how these events played out. But we do have quite an understanding of the state, the ruling elite, and the ways in which they intervene, in these movements, in these spaces.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Said. I'll just answer your first question. So this, in respect of the role of the youth, to an extent, we'll say that the youth have been less participating, and we're in a country whereby we have a higher percentage of youths, and we have the higher percentage of people who are considered willing and able to work. And these people are the ones who should be making the changes, who should be making the decisions, who should be getting themselves involved. But we've left it so much that we believe it cannot work, it will not work, and there's no need to try. That we got to a position whereby even when we wanted to try, we could not do as much because we did not even believe as much. Now, looking at a lot of the movements and how this whole election processes came, people came out to give their voices, to say, oh, we want an end to this, or we want you to stop killing us, or we want police reforms. People came out to give their ideas. People came out to lend their voices, to speak up and speak out about certain issues that were facing them and they were facing the country in general. And they were actually pushed down and made inconsequential by some certain states actors. Now, if we look at how the youth should look into these issues and see the ways that they can move on from it, not necessarily move on, but move on like they're thinking and kind of like increase their IQs to see how we can actually beat these people down and get a country that we desire, it is by participating. Is as simple as participating. The energy we put into complaining that this water is unclean, the energy we put into complaining that these bandits keep coming to us, the energy we keep to complaining that we are tired of having strikes in our schools. Some people didn't even feel it. Some people didn't even want to speak up about it. That is how denigrated our society has become. That is how little our politicians have made the youth become. And now they're telling us that we are the ones that will tell you what you need to do, or give you where you need to feed from, or give you the water that you need to drink. And my youth want to sit down and say, it's fine, give me your water. Just because they don't want to participate. In this recent election, we had over 93 million people registered to vote. And the higher percentage of it went to the youth. Because these people, or just certain youth, had felt that there was a point in our lives in the country when we're not listened to. And that point was during NSAS. This election was shaped, or the youth shaped this election because of what happened during NSAS. And they wanted to make a change. For the first time, yes, we wanted to participate. Everybody came out, everybody was loud. The percentage of the youth who wanted to participate was a whole lot higher to those that just wanted to sit in their houses and say, oh, it is not my business. Now, out of that 93 million people, 87 million people got their PVCs. So that's why we need the people. People need to participate. The youths need to understand that whatever it is, you can't just sit down in your house and continue to complain. You need to participate.
All movements in the lives of nations are usually by the youths. And so you find that the movement towards independence in Nigeria was led by the youths. That's why a lot of the leaders in the First Republic were in their 20s, some of them 23, 24, and they were ministers. In the attempt to end military rule, when we had the pro-democracy movement, I was one of the oldest in that group then. So you had people who were in their 20s actually, fighting at that time. And of course the NSAS also. So you have that kind of thing. As you know, I belong to the old school. So when we are asked to come to such places, there's a tendency to always write things down, So if you don't mind, I will be also looking at my phone to see one or two things. So for me, the best of times we had was the First Republic in Nigeria. We had a civil system that was terminated by the Aguiyi-Ironsi coup in 1966. I emphasize that because a lot of people talk about the Nzogu coup. The Nzogu coup actually was an aborted one. It did not succeed. It was Ironsi that actually carried out the coup. So you had the, Ironsi coup. And I say one of the problems we face today is that that federalism that was that was abolished has not been reinstated. So we have a unitary system of government that continues to run. A kind of government that runs our lives, whether you like it or not, that controls all the minerals and even our lives also. So, and I reflect that in the First Republic, we had the Prime Minister and the leaders of the 4 regions, 5 of them. And they ran the country well, in my own view. Today, we have the President and 36 ministers, governors. And so that's 37 people. I don't think we're having the same kind of results that, we have been having. So I think there is therefore some type of degeneration, because these 36 governors and the president is a huge bureaucracy, and they bleed our system. In fact, when I heard that Wike sacked 21 heads of parastatals and agencies, I said, in this one Abuja, 21? I'm not too sure what exactly they are doing. And if you look at our constitution, it says the reason why we have government is for the people's welfare and security. And I reflect that when you talk about the welfare of the people, we all know where we are. And the one way I always look, because I'm not an economist, but I try to analyze the system this way, to say, in 2015, what was the national minimum wage? It was 18,000 naira. What was the cost of a bag of rice? It was 7,500. So it means that if you have the minimum wage in 2015 at 18,000 naira, you could buy 2.5 bags of rice. The minimum wage, of course, has been increased. It's now 30,000 naira. But that minimum wage can only buy you half a bag, because a bag of rice in Abuja now is between 58,000 and 61,000 naira. So you have that kind of degeneracy. And in those days, I remember when we were students, when we were mobilizing, we were asked to move at any time. So you can take a bus overnight and get to where you're going. But now even in daytime, you have to pray that you get to where you're going. So we have that kind of problems. I must say that I find the country a bit better today, because for me, under President Buhari, we were on autopilot. We were just flying. So, but now you have somebody trying to gain controls. Hopefully it will begin so we don't crash. But the kind of democracy we've had is about willing buyers and willing sellers. People buy their votes and sell their votes. So we've had problems. Although, of course, as you know, the security has tried a lot. They arrest a lot of people, and then nobody is taken to court, nobody is jailed. So you just simply go on the way it's been going on. So, coming very quickly to what we're talking about, what next for change-seeking Nigerians? And I think that the change we seek, for those with my own analysis, is that we're either seeking to reform the country, the system, or we're trying to change the system. But I might be in a position to talk about the reform, but certainly not about the change. I'm not a change maker like Juwon, So, but I say seriously that when you talk about democracy, it's not as if it's one franchise or some monolithic thing. The Westminster type you find, there are 650 constituencies in the UK, and the man who becomes prime minister is elected by only one of the 656. So long as other parliamentarians, when the ruling party says their leader, that man automatically becomes prime minister. And what that also means is that the prime minister has no time limit. There are people who have been prime minister for Britain for 21 years, 19 years. It goes on like that. I think if it were in Africa, we'll talk about, people staying put. So you have that kind of democracy, and you have the American democracy, which is also very unique. They call it presidential democracy. In that case, while democracy is supposed to be about majority votes, in the case of the US, you do not have that. You can win all the votes there are in the world and still not be elected. And I gave the example of 2016 with Hillary Clinton, who has 65,854 votes. That is 48.2% of the total votes. And Mr. Donald Trump, who has 62,980 votes, was elected. The difference between them was 2.9 million votes. But Clinton lost and Mr. Trump won. And that reflected that if you talk about 2.9 million votes, that's the total population of countries like Albania, Lithuania, Slovenia, like Latvia, Estonia, Montenegro, Malta, and Iceland put together. But the woman lost. Now, that's the type of democracy. You also have the Chinese democracy. It's called socialism with Chinese characteristics. And that democracy has 2,980 members in parliament. That's the largest parliament in the world. And that democracy fits every day 1.412 billion people daily. And it's virtually abolished poverty all over the country. You have the people's democracy in China, in Cuba, in which you mainly have representatives of mass organizations. And the executive is also like that. And that democracy delivers on free education, quality education for everybody, free health, one of the best health systems in the world for everybody. So I said, if you want change in Nigeria, you need to develop your own type of democracy. And I suggest that the kind of democracy we can have in Nigeria, I call it the Afrocentric democracy. It's a democracy that will take into consideration our cultures, our traditions, and we guarantee food for everybody. We guarantee education, healthcare, and shelter. So what do we do in Nigeria? We really need reforms. And part of the reforms I think we need, I said, for us to have a true change in Nigeria, we need a federal system in which defense, currency, and foreign relations will be on the exclusive list. Anything outside that, the state should run them. Anything outside defense, currency, and foreign relations. That is, I think, how we can have a a federal system. And we have a state, we need state police also. And the kind of police, both at state and federal level, should be headed, in my own view, by a lawyer who will be a son. What do you need the IG for? The IG is to run administration. And they don't even run it well. So you can have their deputies running the operations. That's my view. I think we need a kind of country to return back to the First Republic, where you had some type of what you now call resource control, where a state that produces a particular mineral or resources can have 50% of it. And the 50% can be divided with federal government having 20% and the states having 30%. The National Assembly is too large. And I just suggest that we should just abolish the House of Representatives. So you have only the Senate as, and they should be part-time members. And I suggest that the parliament we are going to have should be one that politicians will not more than 30 or 40% of the number. The other 60% should be representatives of mass organizations like market women, youths, trade unions, community-based organizations, farmers associations, professional associations like the NBA, and the accountants. And I also suggest that the federal executive should be similarly composed. The judiciary needs to be democratized. In my own view, almost all cases in the country should be at the level, should be treated at the level of the community, the local government or states. For if you want any appeal, you can have 6 or 8 states bunched together, so that you can have the appeals at that level, which can be regional. So, in other words, for me, the Federal High Court, the Appeal Court, the Supreme Court should just be abolished. They have no use. You can replace the Supreme Court with the Constitutional Court that will talk about the Constitution. So, and I also believe that the CJN, like the IG, is an administrative position. You don't need a judge to be the Chief Justice of Nigeria. I believe that you can have a very good lawyer, the rank of the son, to be the Chief Justice of Nigeria. Now let me just conclude by saying that for change-seeking Nigerians who want a system change, I can only say their desire cannot be accommodated under the current constitution. So you'll have to go somewhere else or find other ways of carrying that change. And I'm not competent to discuss that at this forum. Thank you. Yeah.
You've set a very interesting context historically for, in a sense, how we got here in terms of the institutions we have from the First Republic to the current one. I think you've also laid out a very intriguing, let's say, wish list of reforms for how we can get to a better concept. But I feel that there's a point that's maybe missing there that I think your experience, your personal experience, could really help clarify for us, which is.
They want to remove me from power. And that practically explained the power of that movement and why the movement was drowned in blood. But the movement rose to that level of prominence, and it didn't stop there. The movement then transcended into intervening politically, because it drew an important conclusion that, look, power lies on the streets, all right, we've displayed our power on the streets, we can also show that same power on the ballot. So, and it explains the influence and influx of young people into the political arena in 2023. Look, one thing is certain, the 2023 election is not just only one of the worst elections, it also recorded serious apathy, serious apathy. As a matter of fact, the number of people who have been voting in Nigeria's general election had been declining progressively since 1999. And the level of confidence in our electoral system had been reducing since after. As a matter of fact, in 2007, when Yar'Adua became president, right, he admitted that the election that brought him in was rigged. right? But yet, we had a judiciary that still stamped that, that election, even after a confession by the beneficiary of the fraud. So, like, the fact that the Nigeria's democracy has not reflected the will of the Nigerian people, both at the ballot and in policies and economy, accounts for the declining participation and apathy, and it climaxed in 2023. But despite that apathy, one thing was significant, and it is like the NSAS generation was very, very conspicuous in that electoral cycle. So, and like I said, it was for a carryover from the streets down to the ballot. So, but despite the power of the NSAS generation, there is also some important lessons to like two that we can point out. I'll point a lesson out, number one, from the NSAS movement, and number two, from the election period. So it is generally speaking, it is generally understood that Nigeria's population is quite youthful, right? And which accounts for, again, our conclusion that young people can determine the political direction of our country. So despite the power we displayed with NSAS, very few young people put themselves up for office, right? Very, very, very few young people, including the NSAS generation. She didn't contest. I didn't say that. But we were quite very active in the political scene. And this is number one, largely due to the fact that the political parties, you practically have to, most of the political parties, that is, you have to bow to the whims of, the big men NSAS wanted to push out of business.
Right.
You understand? So you have to bow to their, because it's an highly monetized space. I mean, which young people would have 100 million naira to go and buy presidential form? That person needs to visit the EFCC, or we would have like millions of naira that requires to just purchase a form. Then you dollarize the primaries. You have to have some, so so the political parties are just like that. I think, but for few political parties, I think the AAC was practically the only political party that did open up its form for free. And I think perhaps it's the reason a few NSAS activists were able to contest underneath the AAC. But outside that, there was no political party that gave that, like that, young people particularly can't purchase form.
Well, the first thing is that workers, we know, that's the largest organized group I know, conscious group, structured with, a system. And so the whole idea was that, well, if we protested against President Obasanjo, especially over this fuel price increase and other things like that, that perhaps it is necessary for the workers to try to attain power beyond the discussions and demonstrations that we have, that perhaps if we came to power, things might change. So we established that, but also to let the workers know that it was not going to be like a revolutionary overthrow. So it was called Party for Social Democracy, PSD, which later was changed to the Labour Party. Now the idea behind that was to have workers as vanguard. You get it? And so that's the problem that the Labour Party has had. But it was a very good opportunity for a person like Peter Obi, representing Jimmy Agbaje, who wanted to come to the Labour Party and run. So I again informed them and said, okay, we are going to the primaries. While they were waiting for the primaries, the Labour Party leadership in Abuja announced Femi Pedro as a candidate. You get the problem. So more or less it was becoming a monetized thing. And so when the former governor of Ondo State, sorry, we call it Iroko. Mimiko, but it's Iroko. So when Mimiko decided to run, he then moved over to the Labour Party and won the elections in that state. I remember a small battle we had. The minimum wage in 2010 was increased to 18,000 naira. Like the National Assembly offered 70 billion naira out of palliatives and other things like that, like the prayer alert. You get it? Now we have members of the Labour Party in that assembly, and I've not had any of them. Maybe I've not reading very well. I may not be very current, but I've not had any of them come out to say no. We're opposed to this. So that orientation has to be there. Perhaps you may need to reorientate them on the values and principles of the Labour Party and try to build it. Maybe.
Thank you. Can we see a show of hands if there are questions or comments in the room? Yeah. So if you keep your comment or question really brief, about a minute. Maybe what we'll do actually is collect these three first, respond, and then we'll come back over here. So over to you.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Joy, and I missed some part of the conversation, and I apologize for that. And I hope I won't say things that have been said before. But I have a few things that I wanted to share from the part that I listened to. I would say the conversation about Nigeria and the state of the country is one that when you start, it's a lot to take in, a lot to say. I want to play some sort of devil's advocate from the part of the conversation that I heard, and that was talking about the involvement of young people during the SRS campaign, and in on the one hand, you can say that there isn't a lot that young people can do, because we went out during the NSAS campaign and the NSAS protest, and it ended the way it did. We also, went out during the last elections and it ended the way we did. I would say that you can draw a straight line from the protest to how young people were mobilized during the elections.
When I listen to us talk about young people, it seems we're looking at young people. We have a country, Nigeria without Nigerians. When we talk about, so what are the common trends? What's the common object of our love, so that when young people in Lagos are protesting police brutality or bad governance or the structure of the country, it's also resonating with young people in Sokoto, in Maiduguri. We are not thinking about this. We're just operating in silos. The problems of Nigeria are much deeper than what we think. And until we understand the fundamentals, I don't think we'll be dealing with them. Thank you.
The chairman of the African National Congress, AAC, here in FCD. Please permit me some time, because I've noted some points here. One, I don't see the difference between a vehicle with a bad driver and a vehicle without a driver. That's number one. The same thing, Buhari, the same thing, Tinubu. No difference. Number two, we lost it after or during NSAS, the moment we allowed the so-called celebrities to determine our positions. Very, very hard one. We lost it in that way, because many of them were taking things for out of their own personal interests, not considering the interest of Nigerians. Number three is that when we started with the use of emotions, tribalism, religiosity, instead of considering antecedents, etc., we lost it. And that is why some of us went on with emotional support to wrong people during the elections. We lost it completely. And then we have to return back. Number four, there are still political parties. Thanks to Mr. John, he said there are platforms that young people can come together. And one of them is AAC. That is my party. You can come there. You are welcome. Number 5, sentiments. The other day, sorry, I'll round up soon. The other day, I was at a summit, a security summit with FCT stakeholders. And this guy that is appointed by Wiki, a young guy, 32 years, right? Recently appointed. Good. He was speaking and we had a heated argument because I sensed something he was saying. He was talking about youth involvement. Youth involvement to him was for him to have been appointed. And I said, no, you are not representing us, you are representing yourself. That's why you are saying that youth are not in this government, as far as I'm concerned. So we started the argument from there. Then,
Final point, please.
Okay,
Final point.
okay. Because if I want to name some of these things, I'll go long. But let me end by saying, look, the sister here said we don't need to go with subsidy because the country is broke. Nigeria is not broke. If Nigeria is broke, these guys will not be having the budget for the senators alone, having those sort of cars. Let them just go back and start with that. Why should the senator drive an SUV of how many million? 200 million or whatever. Why? How much is the salaries? All of those are what is contributing to this whole confusion. We are saying Nigeria is broke. Nigeria is not broke. Please, let's get this thing straight. Thank you.
I have 2 questions for each of the panelists. Before I go to my question, let me corroborate Mr. Bob. Nigeria is not broke. We have people sleeping in show glasses in Abuja. Sure. And we have empty estates in hundreds in Abuja. Empty estates, not empty houses. So Nigeria is not broke at all. Let me to the questions. My first question is for my Miss Sarah. I would like to ask, do you think that a party whose flag bearer moved in 3 days to the primary elections from PDP? Because I know maybe that's the question that nobody wants to ask directly, and I think we should ask those questions directly. Because we have to justify inviting youths into the Labour Party. A party whose flag bearer came from PDP 3 days to the primaries of the election and got the, after buying the PDP form for 70 million naira, got the Labour Party form for 30 billion naira for presidency. Do you count that party as a party that represents democracy? Because when we say Labour in Nigeria, a lot of people, when they hear Labour, they don't hear democracy. That Labour is people that call strike and call it up anytime they want without the input of the masses. So, Labour Party is behaving exactly like the NLC template too. We're about to have a protest very soon in Nigeria, which is a very good initiative by the NLC. Maybe, thank you. Because we don't have any input. So the Labour Party is also taking the same direction. So I think we need to answer that part. Do you think the Labour Party represents the democratic interests of Nigerians? That's one. For Comrade Owil Kemfa, I would like to ask, he really made a clear point that he does not want to talk about much of system change and all that. But yeah, for a while now, I mean, I've been involved in activism thanks to Mr. Jumonsi Teddy, who recruited me into student activism and made me look like him. I've been working actively for like 10 years now. So yes, I've been entertaining thoughts about, is it possible to make a change within the system? And my question is, the main question in my mind has always been, what do you think, sir, as with your experience, is it possible to make a change within the system without changing the system itself? Without falling into the trap of compromise and cooptation? And then for Comrade June, my question is actually more philosophical. Because we have made a lot of points about NSAS. And from where I stand, the major thing NSAS lacked was a coordinated resistance philosophy for the demands.
Not a young person anymore, but I was inspired by it. And from my own experience now, the courage that has given me, I think is something that NSAS should be so proud of. And if everybody could take that and put it into practice in their own life, I think you'll see huge changes. Then from NSAS, you can pick another issue, and another issue, and another issue. And that's how I think change can happen. First of all, let me just say, I had an issue with the police. And because of NSAS, I'm making a formal complaint. that is a bold step that every single Nigerian can do. If you have an issue, they don't treat you well, you complain. There are cervical, there are organizations. Just do that alone. And if that's the only thing you do, you can cause change in this country. But we each have to take responsibility for our own part. And I think that's what we don't do. We expect everybody else to do it, but we won't do it.
Part of the problem that I think both you and Joanne were describing coming out of NSAS is the difficulty of establishing lasting institutions, right? You come out of these moments of, quite a bit of youth excitement, youth organization, even historical in some ways, but then some of the ambitions are not realized and people return home feeling very apathetic. It seems there's a gap there that maybe institutions can fill. But given the experience of the past election, some of the contradictions arising in attempts by young people to gain tickets within the party, some of the difficult institutional history.
Well, first of all, I want to say that to an extent, a lot of youths do not want to participate. A whole lot of youths don't want to go and get tickets. Some people don't want to be involved in politics. They want to vote, but they don't want to go and get a form or try to, be partisan. A whole lot of people want to make changes, but they don't want to be partisan. And that is, it's allowed to an extent, but then you can't really fault it on the parties. Now, for a party like Labour coming into the game and trying to bring in young people who are smart enough, who are educated enough, and who are results-driven enough to actually make a change, they kept asking people, if you want a ticket, you come get a ticket. If you want a form, you come get a form. To the point whereby they were actually announcing that, we're trying to fill in some names. If you notice, most of the names were just placeholders because it's a party that is just growing. It's a party that didn't expect the trajectory that they got during this election. It's a party that did not know that this was going to happen. And it's a party that is still trying to keep up with the pace because the youth are moving so fast and it can't catch up. So it needs to meet the youth at that point, side by side, where we are already. So a lot of parties will have issues, like my respected brainiac comrade has stated today, that to an extent they were planning on bringing in some people in the party and only for them to hear that, something happened somewhere. If you look at most of those issues, they were actually, when it came into limelight or when they actually brought it up, most of them were immediately resolved because, again, we came in and we met a certain set of people. Now it is for us to decide, now this set of people, we want to take them out, if we want to have this party, to call our own party for us to make a change in the country. That also brings us back to participating. Now, how many of us here want to say, okay, if I want to make a change, I don't want to be non-partisan anymore. I want to go get a membership card from one party. Some of us here don't have a membership card. Some of us don't want to be involved in the party. But then when issues come in this party, we want to actually make sure that our voices are heard, that, okay, this party should do what we're saying.
For a couple of reasons, and I think the main one is that we can't, if we want to actually make a sustainable, lasting change in Nigeria, we can't build hopes on individuals, right? I'm sure you know that as much as I do. So I wonder if there's something to the institution itself that attracted you, and if there's something kind of inherent to that institution that you think should attract more young people beyond, particular individuals who might be here one electoral cycle, might not be here the next. Is the institution itself, because of how it's set up, because of what it stands for, what we're fighting for?
Okay, first of all, let me just talk about what you raised about costs. No party can run without funding. most of these political parties that were set up before just set up so that they can, let me use the word, cash out. They just want to put somebody there, sit on one table, plan left and right, get money from one candidate, tell the candidate, oh, INEC did not release your name. The candidate will go and beg INEC, come back and beg you, give you 2 million or give you one amount of money, and then they go back again to tell another party, I have this candidate, do you want us to frustrate him? They get money. I mean, political parties in this part of the world have not shown us that there's something that any good result-driven youth should actually follow. We have seen it happen over and over again, and we're still seeing it happen. So when a political party comes together to say, okay, we want to be different, then they need people to help them be different. If the costs of maybe getting a form for the House of Reps, most of the House of Reps in the party didn't even pay for form. Most of the governorship candidates didn't pay for form. Free. Now, if we the youth want to keep that momentum, we need to actually get involved. We need to join the party, and we need to encourage the party not to depend on funding from these forms by ensuring that we pay our dues and give our own part of charity to the party. To pay for the form, another 100 million. Then I have to go and start seeing all the National Working Committee members in their houses. Some of them will say, oh, don't come to my house, come to this restaurant. They don't have cameras. Nobody will see us. You go to the back door, you drop 10 million, drop 50 million to run for a seat where you're expected to sit down there and represent the people. So how do you think these people will go there and represent the people? First of all, the first thing they will do is try to make that money, all that money that they made. So you start hearing crazy construction plans. You start hearing projects that doesn't exist. Because every single thing that they do will be to make themselves richer. They've spent money. So you see, that cost that you raised, that is one of the most important aspects and the most important value that would be needed to run any sensible political party for the youth to engage in. Look at what they've done to you youths in the past. Look at what they did during NSAS. Just 2 or 3 months ago, they said they were going to bury unknown 103 people in Lagos. 103 people in Lagos are unknown. They don't have families. And then you came during 2020 when youths came out to tell you, put a stop to the brutality. You came out and did that same brutality that they were protesting against. You brutalized them, peaceful people who were waving their flags, no guns. Asari Dokubo the other day stood here in Abuja with his people protesting with machetes and armors. No one policeman went there. No group of army went there. There was no tear gas. There was no water cannons. So the youth are actually coming together in a place where they have like minds, with no corruption, with no fraud charges, and with a belief that these people, if we come together, we can actually make a change and make Nigeria work for all of us.
Thank you, Sarah. Let me come to Juwan to have the last word, at least in terms of my questions, and then I'll open up. I've seen party system, particularly Labour Party, as an avenue for realizing the ambitions for a new Nigeria. Do you think that the electoral system, through the existing parties, provides any kind of avenue, in how she's describing it? And, in effect, what is to be done for young people right now, given the experience of the 2023 election? I would just be curious in hearing you respond to this in particular, but also some of the points Comrade Lakenfa was raising about the history of social movements, workers, and the origin of the Labour Party as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think Sarah has correctly described the general routes within, especially the political parties that are usually projected as frontliners. They were perfect, and I think it spoke to my earlier point regarding political parties not giving equal playing field to young people and people of working class background, generally speaking. So, but she said that if not Labour Party, where do you want young people to come to? They can come to the AAC, Sarah. So, yeah. That's that by the way. So yes, I think generally speaking, to one of the things we need young people must now do at this point in time is beyond coming together. Right? We need to come together, but come together to do what exactly? Come together for what? We have to identify our challenges and our interest as a class. We have to identify our interest as a class, and not just as young people, but even as workers or people of working class background. And interestingly, the chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution, describes generally the kind of states Nigeria should be, a welfare state, so that policies like privatization, commercialization, deregulation, that had become the hallmark of Nigeria's fraudulent democracy, they are like in contravention to the chapter 2 of the Nigeria's constitution. We should not be talking about removal of subsidy on fuel. In fact, we should be discussing more subsidies for the Nigerian people. We should be discussing subsidies on food. We should be discussing subsidies for farmers. We should be discussing subsidies on education. Like, we should be discussing more investment into education. How can we should be discussing free education. The chapter 2 of the Constitution stated clearly that Nigeria should not be run in a way that guarantees wealth in the hands of a few. It talks about cost of living allowance. It talks about free education. It talks about benefits for the unemployed. Young people, through their vanguard organization, especially because just as the vanguard organization of young people is largely the student movement, right? And just like the vanguard organization of the working people is the trade unions. Okay, so the young people need to make a commitment and align themselves with political interests that align with that chapter 2 of that constitution that declared expressly how the Nigerian state should run. This should be so that political parties talking about deregulation, talking about subsidy removal instead of introduction of more subsidies, political parties not discussing how to make education free and accessible to it should not be in the conversation of young people, because those are specifically our areas of interest.
First of all, the political parties had a specific time frame for their primaries. And towards the primaries, there were a lot of issues that happened. And I mean, the candidates you spoke about left a political party even before the primaries, because they're already, again, that's delegates issue, and you're already seeing what is playing out. If we had a point or we had a situation where you can run independently, that would be what you would do. But you putting your energy on that political party because you believe you can make a change and they're not giving you the opportunity to do so. If you feel like, okay, I can do this and I have the capacity to do this, and you've told everybody, go and verify, what's the sense of following or encouraging people to follow that person? I kind of feel like you're being a bit biased. You're giving me some AAC vibes from Juwon.
We'll have time to talk some more.
Then possibly you can rephrase that. But again, there were no primaries at the time he moved, and the party he moved to had not even had their own primaries. and it was like a sold ticket. You come under us and you run. And the person who was supposed to actually run under that party even said, my brother, I believe in you more than even I believe in myself. I'm going to step down for you.
Okay.
No, without anybody exchanging hands. So thank you. Because of the time, thank you.
So we need to be careful the way we make our analysis. The second point I want to make is that I think parties like yours will need to sit down and ask yourselves, how did you perform so well or so badly? How come a Labour Party is coming from nowhere and garnering so many votes, and my party is not getting as many votes as this? Comrade, a party is not a party because it says it's a party. A party is a party where it can perform the role of a party. And so I think parties like the AAC, my comrade.
Yes, comrade.
Which party is that? AAC.
I'm proud of it. You're not saying it with.
No, I'm not going to ask how many votes they got in the last election.
I can tell you, I have the record.
But seriously, a party, that's why I said, will people in the party now also be the Labour Party in future? Comrade, there's a difference between a normal political party and a vanguard party. And so if you want to build a vanguard party, it's different from this one you have to go and register with INEC. You get it? So that's why people talk about the revolution of not being televised. No, you get it. But seriously, I think parties like those of Juwanko will need to ask themselves, we have been running. We ran last elections, we ran in 2023, and then this other party came out. What happened? That is how you can build. And you can also build alliances. The reforms I've suggested are not possible under the system. That's a very basic thing. I'm only just I'm not measuring it straight. But these reforms are not possible. Because you have a system that operates and runs on this thing to ensure that the country runs on this line. So anything going to deviate from it, you're going to have problems. So I don't believe that we can do that.
How do we surmount that problem that led to its collapse? And should federalism be about what it was in the First Republic, or are there other principles, for instance, around the fiscal aspect that you would consider more central in the question of how we get a working federalism?
The basic issue of federalism is that the country is made up of various peoples and nationalities. And every one of them should then have a say. So we are coming together, and when you come together, you are federating on particular principles. Once you have a unity system like this, Buhari will come and run a Fulani democracy. Tinubu will come and run Yoruba democracy, and Peter Obi will come and run production. By the end of the day, and he will federate. No, everybody who are coming together must have a sense of belonging.
Consciously relegated to a disadvantageous position. I would try to chip in my bits, and starting from the beautiful lady who talked about the fact that with Nigeria is broke, and interestingly, other persons have answered that. Sarah did provide answer to that too, but Nigeria is only broke whenever it needs to attend to the needs of the people that have elected them. That is the only time you hear, oh, Nigeria is broke. But some weeks ago, Punch published a report that Nigeria made 1.8 trillion naira from taxes from social media platforms only. And in 2013, ASU's Needs Assessment Committee did recommended that for Nigeria's universities to rank minimally with global standards, we need 1.3 trillion naira. Right, and just taxes from social media platforms only can fix that. Right, that is on the one side. If Nigeria is broke, people would not be breaking their heads, to contest elections with billions of naira for a salary that cumulatively is about 58 million naira. Right? So, and then we have a situation where trillions of naira have been used in time past to bail out banks. Right? Whenever the rich people run the banks to the ground, you understand, our own government will bring in taxpayers' money to bail out their rich friends. But they find it difficult to dedicate even a fraction of that amount to bail out the health sector, to bail out education, to pay workers a minimum wage. As a matter of fact, some weeks ago, the National Assembly was saying that the hardship of the economy is so terrible that they are demanding increase in their already outrageous allowances. That will not cause inflation. Nigeria is not broke at that moment. But when Labour talks about, we need increase in wages, inflation, and Nigeria is broke. So I think we need to stop pushing this media narrative. Nigeria is not broke. We deserve subsidy on food, subsidy on education. We deserve subsidy on. In fact, as a matter of fact, any reasonable country that wants to avoid economic chaos must keep price of energy lowest to the barest minimum. You can learn that. You can take that even from lessons from America and Europe, even at the wake of this Russia-Ukraine war. Europe and United States put trillions of dollars and to ensure that price of in terms of subsidy, to ensure that price of energy are kept low and affordable. Because now look at it, with the remove with hike in fuel price, the SMEs, they are dying off. And the informal economy, they're killing it. So let me just so I think I've spent too much time addressing the subsidy matter, and I go straight to the within the last 1 minute. Good. Yes, to talk about within the last 1 minute.
There was the issue of youth as well that I think remains. Is youth a meaningful category? Should we really be organizing under this umbrella, or should we rather kind of everybody to his own ideological camp more so?
Yes, I made a point about it, that young people should identify their class interest. And it's around this interest that we should organize ourselves. And indeed, and it was the reason I made, I talked about chapter 2 of our constitution, which seriously talked about how the Nigerian state should be run as a welfare state, so that young people should organize themselves. I did talk about the organization of the vanguard organization of young people really being the student movement. It is not to say that they are not in the trade unions, but whether organized within the trade unions or within, in fact, interestingly now, the trade union now have a youth department. The NLC youth chair is also a friend of mine, and there is a need to organize young people, organize themselves as within the working class, their vanguard organization within the student movement, identify their interest and mobilize their partisanship around that particular class and social interest. And lastly, NSAS regarding what lessons we could pick from regarding the level of organization. I think NSAS picked a lot of lessons. In fact, it learned too much from Occupy Nigeria, to the extent that it ensured that it did not put the power of negotiation in the hands of anybody. Occupy Nigeria was very big, but it was undermined by a compromising bureaucracy. And NSAS did not want to make that mistake. And it adopted, people call it leaderlessness, but I said the movement was leaderful. Like that is so many leaders everywhere. You understand? And interestingly, it is there are leaders at each barricades. And when people say EndSARS was not organized, that's another fallacy. For instance, as someone like myself who was on the Alausa barricades, I was talking with people at the Lekki barricades. You need to ask, how was food moving from, there are hundreds of barricades in Lagos, and yet food will get to each and every, how are the vehicles moving? There were communications with each barricade leaders, but interestingly, the Nigeria's ruling class brought that movement to a halt when they discovered that we are already building a pan-national leadership network. And it is not true that EndSARS did not happen in the north, except if we think Kaduna is not north, or if we think Kogi is not north, or Jos is not north. But again, there is a need to align the interests of young people such that they are speaking in one language. NANS once played that role, where if there is a crisis in Abu Zaria, Obafemi University will respond, University of Lagos will respond, Unsoka would respond. We have a common way with which we meet. The trade union still has that tradition.
Thank you for your very insightful comments and for bearing with us as we ran slightly behind schedule. And thank you also to the audience for, I think, very robust engagement. I won't attempt to sum up what has been a very wide-ranging conversation, but I'll just say that our discussion need not end here. And in fact, practically, there will be a drinks reception at a venue that we will discuss after for folks who want to come and continue the conversation afterwards. But even beyond that, I think that part of the objective of this meeting, as I said before, was to create a new space for thinkers, intellectuals, activists in Abuja from Africa as a country, the organizers of this event. And as I mentioned, if you have an interest in writing or in thinking about some of the themes that were discussed here further, then definitely reach out to us and we'll accommodate your ideas. So once again, thank you very much for a very interesting discussion. And like I say, if you want to be a part of, kind of further discussion beyond this, then let's congregate somewhere, perhaps by the coffee stand after, and discuss those plans. But once again, thank you very much for your attention, for your time. Please let's even have a round of applause for ourselves. It's a strong audience. Thanks again.